Okay, we're going over Unit 3, Mental Health. Mental health is in the middle of Unit 3. So, one of the main things we need to be really careful about with mental health is misdiagnosing a child, right? So, children with mental illness are diagnosed only after a mental health specialist carefully observes signs and symptoms. It is important to understand the information provided in these slides is presented for the purpose of assisting our parents in understanding the warning signs of a possible problem. Parents should avoid attempting to diagnose their children, family, friends, cats, dogs, goldfish, and neighbors. So the problem with this is there's a lot of school and a lot of training that goes in to diagnose children. If you misdiagnose a child and you start treating the child differently because they've giving signs or signals and you decide to go online and look it up and Google all these symptoms and you think you have a good diagnosis, and for whatever reason you think that the caseworker or someone else isn't doing the right thing for the child because the structure isn't set up because they're misdiagnosing the children, you could be horribly wrong. And the problem with that is if you start treating the children as though they have a diagnosis, you could be abusing the children. Let me repeat that. If you start treating the children differently because you believe you've appropriately diagnosed the children with what you think is correct for a mental health illness, you could be abusing the children. Okay? You never, ever want to do that. So if you feel like you have a good warning with something that the child's doing, it's warning you that there's something wrong, what we do is we have them seen by a professional, and the professional makes that call. Professional people have a license in order to do that. They have insurance in order to do that. They have training. They've gone to school for these things. Never diagnose children. Now, this is, I mean, you're obviously going to be like, what's going on with the child? And you're going to want to know what's going on with them, and you're going to want to make an assessment on them. But you never treat them differently or, based on your assessment, decide that they need to be treated a certain way with their mental health. You have to wait for an official assessment before you treat them differently, before they're treated in any other way other than normal. You could severely damage a child doing this. You could label them and make them think they have something wrong with them when they don't. So the point of this is we want to give you some insight into things you should look out for, but we don't want you to diagnose. What we want you to do is to alert us so we can get a professional to diagnose. Once that professional diagnoses that child, they can give you steps and they can give you guidance to do what you need to do to help the child. And then that way, if something does go wrong with the treatment of the child, it's not your problem that it was misdiagnosed. It's the therapist or the psychiatrist. Whoever's going to do that diagnosis, it lands on them. It doesn't land on you. So do not diagnose the children and treat them differently based on what you think is right. And people have done this in the past, and people have gotten in trouble for this in the past. So we give a stern warning against that, okay? Let us know, and we'll have somebody look at the child. So one of the first things we're going to go over now is post-traumatic stress disorder. It's a pretty common term nowadays. A lot of people kind of have an understanding of it, but we're going to go over what it is anyway. We see a lot of post-traumatic stress disorder in people coming back from war, these kind of things where they've had a really traumatic experience. So everyone experiencing stressful events can affect them both emotionally and physically. Reactions to the stress are usually brief, and the person recovers without further problems. However, some people experience catastrophic events that develop ongoing difficulties known as post-traumatic stress disorder. In these instances, the person's life may have been threatened. Maybe they thought they were going to die, right? Serious injury may have occurred, right? Maybe an arm got cut off. Maybe something physical really traumatic happened. They may have been a victim of physical or sexual abuse, violence in the home or community, automobile accidents, or natural disaster. Been diagnosed with life-threatening injuries, right? A child's risk of developing PTSD is related to the seriousness of the trauma. Whether the trauma is repeated, the child's proximity to the trauma, and his or her relationship to victims. So, this could be developed even when something's not happening to them directly, but when they're witnessing something. That's when we covered this when uh, they witness abuse or they witness something happening. That's why you can be charged with domestic violence related abuse, is because it can mentally harm a child. So this is real serious. Most times we have really big traumatic events that we can just obviously move on, or we can repair the damage that it's done to our emotions and to our thoughts. But sometimes the experience is so large and so dramatic and so crazy in our life that we can't get over it. Our brain can't repair, our emotions can't repair correctly. So this is going to be post-traumatic stress disorder. So here's the warning signs that you're going to want to watch out for. Following the trauma, children may show the following warning signs: agitated or confused behavior, intense fear, helplessness, anger, sadness, depression, horror, denial, avoidance of stimuli, situations related to the trauma, real or perceived, withdrawing from family members, friends, and activities, detached from feelings. Those with extensive and repeated trauma may develop a sense of emotional numbing. This is called disassociation. So, let's make a real easy association here so you might understand. Maybe the child came from an area where there was civil war, and whenever you'd hear gunshots or really loud bombs, someone close to them might have died, something might have happened. 4th of July comes around and they're doing fireworks, and this really seems to agitate the youth. You can see there's something really different about them. There's a relationship between noises and sounds like that and trauma in their past. So what I'm trying to help you see is there's things that might be happening with the youth that you don't quite understand, that don't make sense to you. You think the child should be acting a certain way, but they're acting very odd in a different way. And what you need to do is, if you think that there's something weird going on, you need to let us know so that we can have our clinical consultant come in and figure out what's going on with the youth. Okay? Re-experiencing the trauma. A child with PTSD may also re-experience the traumatic event by having frequent memories of the event, or in young children, play in which some or all of the trauma is repeated over and over. Having upsetting or frightening dreams, acting or feeling like the experience is happening again, developing repeated physical or emotional symptoms when the child is reminded of the event. So this something that's not new is children having nightmares or bedwetting. If that's happening, we need to know. We need to know if they're having nightmares. We need to know if there's something going on with their behavior that's, not it's not up to par with what's normal for that child. If you think, oh man, they're having nightmares every night, or they're waking up screaming, that doesn't seem like it's in a normal realm. You need to alert us so that we can have somebody evaluate and figure out what we can do to get the child into a place where they feel safe, where they feel like everything's okay, where they can heal from the trauma. Children with PTSD may also show the following symptoms: worrying about dying at an early age, losing interest in activities, having physical symptoms such as headaches or stomach aches, showing more sudden and extreme emotional reactions, having problems falling or staying asleep, showing irritability or angry outbursts, having problems concentrating, acting younger than their age, for example, clingy or whiny behavior, thumb sucking, showing increased alertness to the environment, repeating behavior that reminds them of the trauma. Okay, the next one we're going to go over is reactive attachment disorder. Uh, Reactive attachment disorder, or RAID, is a complex psychiatric illness that can affect young children. Uh, RAD is characterized by serious problems in emotional attachment to others and is usually identified before the age of 5 by a parent, caregiver, or physician. Common concerns. Often, a parent brings an infant or a young child to the doctor with one or more of the following concerns: severe colic and or feeding difficulties, failure to gain weight. Fear of emotional attachments may manifest as detached and unresponsive behavior, difficulty being comforted, defiant behavior, um, inhibition or hesitancy in social interactions, any inappropriate interactions, being too familiar with strangers. If a child isn't afraid of strangers, but they go up and they sit up in their lap the first time they meet them and is really close with them, that's odd. There should be a period where if a new person is introduced to a child, that they keep some distance, a little bit of distance, with strangers. If they're automatically just right up in their face and overly um, in their physical bubble, that could be a concern. Risk factors. Common risk factors leading up to child development reactive attachment disorder include severe problems or disruptions in early relationships, physical or emotional abuse, neglect, inadequate care in an institutional setting, or other out of the home placement, hospital, residential program, foster care, orphanage, etc. Multiple or traumatic losses or changes in primary caregiver, which means if they're moved around so frequently, if they have to move houses all the time. The next part we're going to go over is oppositional defiant disorder, but really quick, with reactive attachment disorder, some of the things that can happen with reactive attachment disorder is the child can feel unsafe when they start to become closer to a parent, which means uh, something happened in their past where someone they felt close to treated them poorly, or something really bad happened. And so in the future, when they start to feel like they love somebody or they're getting really close to somebody, they push away. So sometimes we can see some of our parents getting really close to the foster child and their relationship's growing really well, and all of a sudden the child will make a real heavy push away and create distance between them emotionally and physically. And that sometimes that can be a sign too. So those might be some things. If you see that they're all of a sudden things are going really well, now they're making a big push to get some separation between you. Maybe you started to have a tighter relationship and they have reactive attachment disorder. If you feel like any of these things are happening, you need to tell us so that we can get them evaluated. So oppositional defiant disorder. All children um, can be oppositional from time to time. This is especially true when they are tired, hungry, stressed, or upset. They may argue, talk back, disobey, or defy parents, teachers, and other adults. I mean, these things are pretty common with most kids. Oppositional defiant behavior becomes a concern when it stands out in comparison to others of the same age and development. It's also concerning when it disrupts the life of the child, which means they're not able to go to school, they're not able to be out in public, they can't hold a job, things like this. Oppositional defiant disorder in children with ODD, there's an ongoing pattern of uncooperative, defiant, and hostile behavior towards authority figures that seriously interfere with the youngster's day-to-day functioning. Symptoms of ODD may include frequent temper tantrums, excessive arguing with adults, often questioning rules, active defiance and refusal to comply with adults' requests and rules, deliberate attempts to annoy or upset people, blaming others for his or her mistakes or misbehavior, often being touchy or easily annoyed by others, frequent anger and resentment, mean and hateful talking when upset, spiteful attitude, and revenge seeking. A child experiencing ODD usually experiences symptoms in one or two settings, but not all. Symptoms are more noticeable at home. A comprehensive evaluation is needed for a diagnosis. ADHD, learning disorders, depression, bipolar, and anxiety may coexist with ODD, which means they have them at the same time. A child with ODD can be very difficult for parents. These parents need support and understanding. Parents can help their child with ODD in the following ways. Always build on the positive. Give the child praise and positive reinforcement when he or she shows flexibility or cooperation. Take a time out or break if you're about to make the conflict with your child worse, not better. This one can be really, really hard. It's hard for people to see in the moment when they're upset and they're reacting to something the child said, versus really understanding that if you react instead of being kind of detached and calm, that you're going to make things a lot worse. It's also good modeling for the child if you do this. If you take a step back and try and look at the situation as if you were a third party and make a decision that way versus being reactive and really angry. Support your child if he or she decides to take a time out to prevent overreacting. So that's really good if the child says, look, I need a break, I'm really mad. Or, hey, can we talk about this later? I'm extremely upset, I'm worried I'm going to say or do something that's going to cause this to be even worse. Pick your battles. Children with ODD often have difficulty with power struggles, so it's wise to choose which battles are worth engaging in. We're going to go over conduct disorder. Conduct disorder refers to a group of behaviors and emotional problems in youngsters. Children and adolescents with this disorder have great difficulty following rules and behaving in a socially acceptable way. They are often viewed by other children, adults, and social agencies as bad or delinquent rather than mentally ill. Many factors may contribute to a child's developing conduct disorder, including brain damage, child abuse, genetic vulnerability, school failure, traumatic life experiences. Children or adolescents with conduct disorder may exhibit some of the following behaviors: aggression to people and animals, bullies, threatens, or intimidates others, often initiates physical fights, has used a weapon that could cause serious physical harm to others, bat, brick, broken bottle, knife, or gun, is physically cruel to people or animals, steals from the victim while confronting them, assault, forces someone into sexual activity. Destruction of property, deliberately engages in fire setting with the intention to cause damage, deliberately destroys others' property, deceitful lying or stealing, has broken into someone else's building, house, or car, lies to obtain goods or favors to avoid obligations, steals items without confronting a victim, shoplifting but without breaking and entering, serious violations of rules, often stays out at night despite parental objections, runs away from the home, often truant from school. And even though these can seem normal, again, we're deciding, is this beyond normal? Is this happening every single night, or is this happening once in a while, right? Do we feel like this is exceptional to this individual, or do all kids generally do some of these things, right? So you're looking for things that are outside the normal realm, okay? If a child's placed in your home is experiencing these behaviors, they will need a comprehensive evaluation. Other disorders that coexist with conduct disorder include depression or bipolar disorder, anxiety, PTSD, substance abuse, ADHD, learning disorders, thought disorders. Early intervention is necessary to combat the ongoing issue related to the conduct disorder. Without treatment, youth are likely to develop disorders through the lifespan that will keep them from having healthy relationships, maintaining employment, being law-abiding citizens. Now remember, this is a mental health issue, right? It's not that they're choosing just to have conduct disorder. This is something that they cannot control. We need to have an evaluation done, and they need to be on a certain plan that can help them grow and be adults in a way where they don't end up in jail for the rest of their life, or they don't end up in a facility where they're on lockdown for the rest of their life. They can, grow up and have a relationship, maintain a job, you know. Okay, the next part we're going over is borderline personality disorder. Borderline personality disorder is a serious mental illness characterized by pervasive instability in moods, difficulties in interpersonal relationships, issues related to self image, maladaptive behaviors. This instability often disrupts family and work life, long term planning, and the individual's sense of self identity. Those suffering from BPD deal with extreme emotion dysregulation, excessive instability, and lack of control over emotions. Symptoms of BPD. Borderline personality disorder is most common among young women. 2% of the population experiences BPD. Symptoms include intense bouts of anger. They get really, really angry. Depression, anxiety that may last for hours or only a day at a time. Episodes of impulsive aggression, self injury, and drug alcohol abuse. Frequent changes in life goals, career plans, jobs, friends, gender identity, values, relationships. One day they're going to be a singer, the next day they're going to be a garbage man, the next day they're going to be a senator, the next day they're going to be a dancer. Um, Life goals, they want to do this with their life, they want to do that with their life. What kind of jobs they're holding down, constantly changing jobs every other week. They have new friends all the time, or they're not making friends all the time. Gender identity, values changing, relationships always changing. So, symptoms of BPD: a view of self worthlessness, may view self as inherently bad or unworthy. They say, I'm bad, I'm not a good person, I'm horrible. If you ever hear anything like that, we need to get an evaluation done right away. That's something you need to make a call to your family consultant right away so that we can have the clinical consultant decide whether or not we need to go in that day and make an evaluation and make sure that they are not going to harm themselves, or to make sure that we can start them in a path that will make them happy and they can have a good life. Self harm or self injuries, injurious behaviors often release pain, cutting, eating disorders, hitting self to leave bruises, threats of suicide. Often feel misunderstood or mistreated, bored, empty, no self identity, frantic efforts to avoid being alone. Quickly engage in relationships, sexual relationships, and platonic relationships. Unstable relationships stem from a fear of abandonment. Intense and stormy relationships, which means they're fighting and then they really, really love each other and then they're really, really fighting really hard all the time. Sudden shifts from idealization of others to extreme dislike or hatred depends on how they feel they are being treated by others. Instability with family members. So shifts of idealization, like they really like this person. They say this person's the greatest. They want to be just like them. And then all of a sudden they hate him. They don't like him anymore. Highly sensitive to rejections, which means, when if you're giving them feedback and if any of it's constructive or it's negative in any way, they're very sensitive to it. They're very upset by it. Inability to cope with separation, even if it's for a short time. If you're going out to the store and they're like, I have to be with you, you can't leave for 10 minutes to go down the street, you have to stay here with me. Sudden changes in plans create instability. Can't feel emotionally connected when a person is not physically present. May become very clingy. If you notice any of these symptoms for BPD, please let Enzyme know so a proper evaluation can be done. Okay, eating disorders. Eating disorders are a serious but treatable disorder that occurs across demographics. Eating disorders are most likely to begin in adolescence, but has become more common for them to occur in childhood. Eating disorders can be deadly if not treated correctly or are left untreated. Heart failure and suicide are the most common causes. Girls aged 12 to 20 were found to have an incident rate of about 5.2 to 13.2% developing an eating disorder, according to the DSM 5 criteria. So, here are some of the key terms: anorexia nervosa, an eating disorder involving self starvation and the inability to maintain a healthy and appropriate body weight. Binge eating disorder, when binge eating occurs at least once a week for a period of 3 months in absence of any purging behaviors, which means they're throwing up or getting rid of food in their body. Uh, Body checking, obsessive, intrusive thoughts and behaviors about body shape and size that can involve repeated checking appearance in the mirror, checking the size and appearance of certain body parts, and or asking others whether they look fat. If someone's constantly looking in the mirror, constantly asking you, do I look fat? Do I look ugly? Does this look bad? Does this look fat? My arms are too fat. They're constantly looking in the mirror. That's what that would be. Body image. One's thoughts and perceptions about their physical appearance. They might be bone skinny, but they think, I am so overweight, I'm huge, I'm fat. Or uh, they might be, thinking that even though they're really, really skinny, they're putting on a lot of weight. And that if you see that or hear that, we need to be told about it so we can have an evaluation done. Bulimia nervosa, an eating disorder that involves binge eating following by purging behaviors, which means they're eating, and then vomiting. Self-induced vomiting, laxatives, diuretics, and or other behaviors to prevent weight gain. Fasting or over exercising. Compensatory behavior, eating disorder behaviors that are used to try and undo the effects of eating or binging eating, such as exercise or purging. They're just exercising an incredibly long amount and not eating very healthy. Food restrictions, eating fewer calories than the body needs to maintain weight and or adequate growth. Food rituals, obsessive rigid behaviors around food and eating, such as chewing a certain number of times, cutting food into tiny pieces, or eating food in a specific order. Which means like I have to eat the corn, the potatoes, then the meat, or and it can never change. Food can't be mixed on the plate. Lanugo, fine downy hair that grows on the body in an attempt to provide better insulation after prolonged inadequate food intake. Orthorexia, an unofficial term used for an eating disorder characterized by an obsessive concern with eating healthy or clean eating. Purging, the use of self-induced vomiting, laxatives, and diuretics after eating in order to prevent weight gain and relieve anxiety. Anorexia is defined as a disorder in which there is either a lack of adequate weight gain or there is a significant weight loss. This is due to restricting of calories and food. Third most common chronic disease amongst young people, asthma and diabetes. Youth between the age of 15 and 24 are 10 times higher risk of dying than peers without anorexia. Males presented 25% of those suffering with anorexia, which is 1/4. Signs and symptoms: dramatic weight loss, dressing in layers to hide weight loss, stay warm, preoccupied with weight, food, calories, fat grams, dieting, refusal to eat certain foods, frequent, common, or feeling fat despite weight loss. Now, refusal to eat certain foods is not uncommon, but if there's just something about it that seems it's not, there doesn't seem to be a good reason. It's not like, oh, I hate broccoli. I don't want to eat broccoli because I don't like the way it tastes, but it's like, I cannot have eggs. I just can't have eggs. They refuse to eat eggs or something like that. It's out of the normal. Complaints of constipation, abdominal pain, cold intolerance, lack of energy, denies feeling hungry, develops food rituals, cooks for others without eating, makes excuses to avoid meal times, expresses need to burn off calories taken in, maintains excessive rigid exercise regimen, withdraws from others, concerned about eating in public, resists slash unable to maintain body weight appropriate for the age, height, build, intense fear of being overweight or fat. Loss of menstrual period, strong need for control, inflexible thinking, suffers from stomach issues, difficulty concentrating, anemia, dizziness, sleep problems, dental problems, enamel erosion, cavities, tooth sensitivity. When you're throwing up bile all the time, that can eat away at your teeth. Dry skin, dry and brittle nails, swelling around area of salivary glands, hair, really thinning hair, muscle weakness, yellow skin, cold, molten hands and feet, swelling, uh, poor wound healing, impaired immune functioning. So they get a cut, it doesn't really ever heal. They're constantly sick. If their appearance looks like they are really not doing well, they're constantly looking ill or sick or lethargic and not healthy. Binge eating, eating large quantities of food to discomfort and in a short period of time. Eat when not hungry. Eat alone because of embarrassment. Happens at least once a week for 3 months. Feel loss of control while binging. Shame, distress, guilt after binge. Most common eating disorders. Most common eating disorder in the USA is binge eating. Often begins in the late teens to early 20s. Approximately 40% of BED are males. Disappearance of large amount of food in a short period of time. These are symptoms of binge eating. Lots of empty wrappers or containers, uncomfortable eating around others, participates in many new fad diets, steals or withholds or hoards food in storage places, withdraws from friends, extreme concerns with body weight and shape, feels lack of control over ability to stop eating, engage in sporadic fasting or repetitive dieting, developing food rituals, feeling of disgust, depression, or guilt related to eating, fluctuations in weight, low self esteem. Bulimia. Bulimia is an eating disorder characterized by the cycle of um, binge and vomiting or other compensatory behaviors to counteract the act of binging. Feel out of control while eating. Self esteem is largely related to the body image. May also suffer from self injury, substance abuse, impulsivity, and risky behaviors. 1.5% of women will have bulimia in their lifetime, 0.5% of men. Weight loss, dieting, and control of food become primary concerns. Disappearance of large amounts of food in a short period of time, frequent trips to the bathroom after meals, smelling of vomit, presence of wrappers or packages, laxatives, diuretics, uncomfortable eating around others, developing food rituals, skipping meals, steals or hoards food in strange places, drinks excessive amounts of water or non caloric drinks, hides body in baggy clothes, maintains excessive or rigid exercise program even when sick or not logically permitted, unusual swelling of cheeks or jaw, calluses on hands from self-induced vomiting, teeth are discolored or stained, withdrawals from friends, looks bloated, frequent diets. I mean, all of these things are out of the norm. If you're noticing the eating is not within the normal realm, you need to say something to us so that we can decide if we need to go in and have an evaluation done for these things. Feels lack of control over eating and ability to stop. Purges after binge. Body weight is typically within normal range. May even be overweight. Extreme mood swings. Fluctuations in weight. Stomach cramps. Menstrual irregularities. Dizziness. Feels cold all the time. Sleep problems. Yellow skin. Poor wound healing again. Orthorexia. Obsession with proper or healthful eating, as well as over exercise or stringent exercise programs. Compulsive checking of ingredients or nutritional labels, cutting out increasing number of food, unusual interest in healthy or pure foods, unusual interest in healthy health of what others are eating, obsess over food that may be served at events, obsesses following the food and healthy lifestyle blogs or social media. Not yet recognized by the DSM. Health consequences of eating disorders. Cardiovascular heart muscle breaks down to malnutrition, pulse and BP drops as fuel to pump blood decreases. Gastrointestinal slow digestion, disrupted stomach emptying, stomach pain and bloating, nausea, vomiting, blood sugar fluctuations, blocked intestines, bacterial infections, constipation, pancreatitis. Neurological loss of nutrition leads to difficulty concentrating, sleeping issues, numbness, tingling from the feet and the hands, seizures and muscle cramps, dizziness. Endocrine, lower sex drive, thyroid issues, lowered resting metabolic rate, high cholesterol, type 2 diabetes. Others is kidney failure, dry skin, and nails, luengo, anemia, uh, alcohol and drugs. This is what we're going to talk about: alcohol and drug use with the youth. Experimentation with alcohol and drugs during adolescence is common. Unfortunately, some teenagers develop dependency and move to more serious drugs and alcohol as time goes on. So just like with mental health issues, some children can something can bad can happen and they can stop and heal themselves and get back to regular. Just like alcohol and drugs, they can start alcohol and drugs and some can stop that and move on, and some form a dependency, which means they have to have it. Their body craves it, and then they move on to more serious drugs. Teenagers at risk for developing serious alcohol and drug problems may include those with a family history of substance abuse, who are depressed, who have low self esteem, and who feel like they don't fit in or are out of the mainstream. This can be really something that happens a lot. Kids feeling like they don't fit in, especially foster care, and maybe they're moving around new schools all the time, right? Or maybe they're a refugee and they don't fit in because no one's from their same culture. They have a hard time with English. Depression could be real serious with these kids. Low self-esteem, real serious with a lot of kids. There's a large majority of kids that have low self-esteem, even when they're just fine. They're great. They, making friends. They're popular. Whatever it may be that makes most people happy, it doesn't do it for them. The average age of first marijuana use is 14, and alcohol use can start before the age of 12. Teenagers abuse a variety of drugs, both legal and illegal. Legal available drugs include alcohol, because these are things you can buy in the store. Alcohol, prescribed medications, inhalants that could be glue, aerosol, solvents, gas. This is another reason why these all have to be locked in the home. Over-the-counter cough or cold syrup and diet medications. The most commonly used illegal drugs include marijuana, stimulants, that's cocaine, crack, and speed, methamphetamine, opiates, heroin, and designer drugs like ecstasy. Warning signs of teenage alcohol and drug abuse may include physical fatigue, repeated health complaints, red and glazed eyes, and a lasting cough. Emotional, personality change, sudden mood changes, irritability, irresponsible behavior, low self esteem, poor judgment, depression, and general lack of interest. Family starting arguments, breaking rules, or withdraw from the family. At school, decreased interest, negative attitude, drop in grades, many absences, truancy, and discipline problems. Social problems, new friends who are less interested in standard home and school activities, problems with the law, and changes to less conventional style in dress and music. Depression. Depression is a big one. There's a large amount of kids that have depression. Okay, depression becomes a mental illness when the feelings of depression persist and interfere with a child or adolescent's ability to function. About 5% of the children in adolescence suffer from depression at any given point in time. Children that experiences excessive stress, loss of loved ones, attention, learning, conduct, or anxiety disorder are at a higher risk for depression. Depression can also be hereditary or they come from the family, right? They come from the DNA. They're more at risk for being sad and depressed. If one or more of these signs of depression persist, parents should seek help. Frequent sadness, tearfulness, crying, decreased interest in activities or inability to enjoy previously favorite activities, hopelessness, persistent boredom, low energy, social isolation, poor communication, low self esteem and guilt, extreme sensitivity to rejection or failure, increased irritability, anger, or hostility, difficulty with relationships, frequent complaints of physical illness such as headaches or stomach aches, absences from school, poor performance in school, poor concentration, a major change in eating or sleeping patterns, talk of or efforts to run away from the home, thoughts or expressions of suicide or self destructive behavior. Suicide prevention. Suicide among young people continues to be a serious problem. Each year in the US, thousands of teenagers commit suicide. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for 10 to 17-year-olds and ranks 17th in the country. Youth today experience many strong feelings related to stressors such as financial uncertainty of the family, fear of growing up and moving out, divorce, reformation of families, moving to a new community. These stressors can lead to an intense feeling of self doubt. For some teens, suicide may appear to be a solution to their problems and stress. Right? They decide it'd be easier if I wasn't here and had to deal with this, or I would be better off, or people would be better off without me. Prevention. Many of the signs and symptoms of suicidal feelings are similar to those of depression. Parents should be aware of the following signs of adolescents who may try to kill themselves: change in eating and sleeping habits, withdrawal from friends, family, and regular activities, violent actions, rebellious behavior, or running away, drug and alcohol use, unusual neglect of personal appearance, marked personality change, persistent boredom, difficulty concentrating, or decline in the quality of schoolwork. Frequent complaints about physical symptoms, often related to emotions such as stomach aches, headaches, fatigue. Loss of interest in pleasurable activities, not tolerating praise or reward. A teenager who is planning to commit suicide may also complain of being a bad person or feeling rotten inside. Give verbal hints with statements such as, "I won't be a problem for you much longer. Nothing matters. It's no use. I won't see you again. Don't worry about me." If they actually are verbally saying some of these things, we need to know right away, that day, that night, you need to make a call. Okay. And then a good just general rule is, if you hear these things and you're trying to get a hold of somebody and you haven't talked to anybody yet, you need to keep a real close eye on them. Okay. Put his or her affairs in order. It means they're like putting things in order so that after they're dead, no one has to deal with their stuff. Giving away favorite possessions. Cleans his or her room if they never ever clean. All of a sudden they're cleaning it. Throwing away important belongings. If Joey or whoever your child is goes and gives away their favorite stereo, their number one Walkman, their phone or something, that's very disturbing. Become suddenly cheerful after a period of depression. They're just really sad all the time, and then all of a sudden one day they're just happy. Happy go lucky, nothing's problem. The problem with that is they've decided to make a plan to kill themselves, and they feel like they don't have to worry about and stress over all these things anymore that has really been getting them down. So if they've been really sad for a long time, then all of a sudden one day they're just happy, 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 happy. This is a warning sign. Has a sign of psychosis, hallucinations, or bizarre thoughts. If your child or adolescent makes a suicide statement, I'm going to kill myself, I just want to die, I'm going to commit suicide, you won't have to worry about me much longer, or anything even like, you have to give me this or I'm going to kill myself, or you have to do this or I'm going to hurt myself or kill myself, or they're trying to use suicide as a way, as a means of manipulating situations. You must take that threat seriously. It doesn't matter if you think they're actually going to commit suicide or if you think that they're just trying to use that as a means to get what they want. You take it serious, serious. Okay, you immediately contact your family consultant, the clinical director, or the executive director to notify the agency of these threats. People often feel uncomfortable talking about death, but if it's a threat, it must be talked about. We have to talk about it. If it's a real threat and they really want to kill themselves, then we'll save their life by intervening and doing everything we can to alleviate the problem that's there. If they're just using it to try and get what they want, then they need to know that there are going to be serious consequences by saying these things. They're going to have to meet with a therapist. They're going to have to go to the hospital. We're going to have to do tests on them. People are going to get really in depth into their business because we want to keep these children alive. We want to keep them safe. We want them to be happy and healthy. Okay, people who don't contact and people who just say, it's just whatever, those people can be charged, okay, with neglect with these children. If you ever hear them say any of these things, we have to know right away. Those contemplating suicide often see talking as a relief. They no longer have to deal with the burden by themselves. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to be direct. Ensign is here to deal with these issues, so please notify us immediately so that we can take the proper actions. With children that want to commit suicide, I know there's people out there that don't want to uh, go up to them and say, "Are you going to hurt yourself? Is there something going on with you? I'm concerned. I need to know you're not going to hurt yourself." Do not worry about saying this. This is probably one of the best things you can do is ask them if they're okay. Ask them if they have a plan to hurt themselves. When you do that, it's not going to push them into trying anything. It's actually going to show them that you care enough that you're thinking about them in that way, that you're trying to prevent that. So have those conversations if you think that that's what's going on, okay? With support from the family and appropriate treatment, children and teenagers who are suffering from mental health concerns or are suicidal can heal and return to a more healthy path of development. The most important thing is that you do not keep your concerns to yourself. Talk with the family consultant, the tracker, or the clinical director immediately about your concerns, and we can help these kids. We can change these kids around. You are changing their lives. You are doing good for another individual, another human being, and that's always, always a good thing.